Hayes VC, this is Dave here, contributing to the Vinyl Tag 2020. It's a new year, so new Vinyl Tag, and participated last year. I thought they had some pretty good questions this year. Some of them made you think a little bit. And if anybody wants to join in, you don't have to answer every question. Just say, I don't have an example of that or whatever. Or, you can show CDs or cassettes or whatever, I'm sure too. But let's get started. The first one was Best Finds of 2019, and I had a couple of them. I bought this box set of Johnny Cash at Half Price Books, and I don't know if you can see the, probably not, sticker right there, but I bought it for $3, and it's his songs from 1955 to 1983. And when I saw this in Half Price Books, I kind of kept looking through it and was wondering, why they had it so cheap. It came with a booklet like that, and of course all 3 CDs. And I kept wondering maybe if the CDs weren't messed up or something, but there does appear to be a mark on them. So yeah, I bought it. $3 is a pretty good price for that. And then I bought a couple others. I found 2 other artists, musicians, in a similar vein. This is Wynton Kelly's 9 classic albums. And I had one other album by Wynton Kelly. It's in the other room, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's not on here. It's a later release. He's a piano player, and there was a piano thread going around not too long ago. I think it was started by Rob in Sound Strange, at any rate, and then other people jumped on the thread as well. But yeah, Wynton Kelly is a really melodic player, and so I was happy to find this. Found it for $2 in a thrift store, along with this one here. He's another piano player, Phineas Newborn Jr. Is a piano player, sort of like, I don't know, Thelonious Monk or some of those earlier bop pianists. And first couple of CDs, I didn't know anything about him, but it's a pretty good release, and I'm not real familiar with the material. But like I said, this is like, I don't know, 9 classic albums on 5 CDs, 9 or 10 albums, and they're real long, and it's a good way to, it's on the Enlightenment. I don't know if you can see the logo down here. It looks like a little light bulb. But if you aren't familiar with any of these jazz musicians, they have a lot of them this way. I think there's one on, well, you can look on Amazon, but I know there's one on Ornette Coleman, and I think Charles Mingus, and several others. You can go look on Amazon, but if you aren't familiar with any of them and you don't have any of their material, this is a real good way to pick it up. I found this one for $2 too. I think they're selling for Amazon for around 12 or so. But it's a good way to listen to a bunch of different albums by the same artist. What was my favorite album of last year? I would say I don't buy a lot of new albums, and I don't ever buy vinyl these days either. I'm mostly a CD fan, unless I can find the vinyl, pretty cheap, or it's a good deal. But I really prefer the CD format myself. But I bought this album here, Angel Bat Dawood, and I just downloaded it off of Bandcamp. And for me, Bandcamp has kind of become a go-to resource. I don't really live in a big town. I mean, it's 90,000 people, so it's a mid-sized town. But the thing about it, it's, you live in a town that has the taste of the town. You know, there's a, you know, the town kind of reflects the taste of everything, and it's not a very hip town at all. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Bandcamp has been a good resource to hear new music and all that kind of things for me. If you go over to Bandcamp, if you can, you know, you can buy either in vinyl, CD, or download it there, and I just generally download it. I'm kind of new school in that regard. And if they don't have the album, you know, or the CD, you know, you can always like download it, but I generally just download it. I read about the artist. I'm not too concerned about album art. You know, I've become less finicky in my old age. But yeah, anyway, this is Angel Bat Dawood. She, I believe, is out of Chicago. And this album is kind of a, I would say it's kind of almost psychedelic, but it's definitely kind of spacey. And there was a write-up in the Chicago paper about her, which I'll try, like I said, I'll try and link this stuff below. But she recorded most of this album on her cell phone. And it's like she plays keyboards and wind instruments, and she kind of loops them around and around, and came up with a real interesting album, you know, kind of more or less kind of self-produced. And yeah, like I said, I'll try and leave a link. A novelty record. Well, this is the first one I could kind of think of. Back when I was a teen, this is Mad Magazine's It's a Gas. And back when I was a teenager, I used to read Mad Magazine along with other comic books. Mother didn't really like us reading Mad Magazine. I think she thought it was too bawdy or too adult or too sarcastic. I'm not sure which, probably all of those. But you know, she really didn't like us reading them, but she kind of, you know, let us do it anyway. But this is It's Gas from Mad Magazine. I clipped it out. It's just a little paper album. And what it is they kind of play some music, and then there's some burping, you know, on it. So they'll play some music, and then somebody will burp, and they'll play some more music, and somebody will burp. And, you know, it's silly. Let's see, Homage record album cover. Okay, I thought of this, although I don't have the other record, but I've got a photo of it right here if I can bring it up real quick. This is the album cover that it's taken from, and I don't know if you can see the text on it. I believe you can, but it's Elvis Presley's first album. You know, you got those pink and green letter text, and the same with the Clash. So that would be my Homage album cover. B-sides and deepest cuts. Let's say deepest cuts, and I've shown this album before. This is Crosby, Stills and Nash, American Dream, and I really like, well, I like all the songs on it. I thought it was a real good comeback album, if you want to call it that. But I really like the song on here called Got It Made, which is sort of a, it's somebody, I think, happy for another individual, you know, that another individual is doing well in life. And I like the sentiment of that song. And then the very last song on here is called Night Song, which is a really neat rock and roll number by the band. So there's that. Something funky. Well, I guess you can't get any more funky than The Godfather of Soul. Can Your Heart Stand It? This is just a compilation of his greatest hits by James Brown. Good soul artist, good funky artist. Weird Shelf Buddies. Okay, this is what I came up with. I have most of my stuff in alphabetical order, although I have like rock on one thing and jazz. I have it split up. Blues is split up. But this is Troutmaster Replica by Captain Beefheart, and his magic band is next to Charlie Daniels. This is his Knight Rider album, and both of them are pretty good albums. I'm not a really big Charlie Daniels fan or anything, but yeah, Odd Bedfellows. Let's see here. I Was There is the next one. It's like name a band. I think what this is name a band that you saw and had an album at that time, and that's this album by Genesis, The Trick of the Tail. When Peter Gabriel had left Genesis, I still kept buying them, and I still like all of them. Granted, I do like the Gabriel era better, but I still bought many of their albums afterwards, and this is a real good album. And even though Gabriel had left the band, they played down in Austin and put on a heck of a show. You know, it was just really a great concert, and that's a good album too if you like Genesis. Wish I had an OG copy. Well, like I said, you know, if I've got a copy of anything, it's good enough for me. And most of my copies are OG anyway, but or you know, they're on CD, and I've got enough CDs, CDs and stuff on vinyl that are duplicates. I started to make a video of that. You know, I got Sgt. Pepper's on CD, and I've got it on vinyl. It kind of reminds me of, you know, if you ever saw that movie Men in Black, I think it's the second one where Tommy Lee Jones says that somebody came out with a new album on format, and the format's really great, and Will Smith says, "Oh, that's great, I gotta buy, you know, the White Album all over again." That's the way I kind of feel like it. I think I've got Yes, Close to the Edge on cassette, CD and album, record out or vinyl, but at any rate, I generally don't buy duplicates of anything, you know, unless I'm looking for an upgrade, which is not very often. But this is another find I found this year. This is the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band, psychedelic band, and again, I don't know if you can see the price I paid for it, but I found it for $1 in a flea market type place. And overall, it's a pretty good album. I mean, it's you know, it's worn a little bit. The first track is the most worn track on it, and you know, if I could find an upgrade, I probably would. I'd like to have their other stuff too, but yeah, for what I paid for it, it's a really good find. Let's see here. A discography you own. Well, that would be Joni Mitchell, which is one of my favorite artists of all time. I believe I have all of her stuff excluding her greatest hits packages, but yeah, she's just a overall great artist. Unique center label. Well, I guess that would be this. This is Deuters. I believe he's a German. Nirvana Road. That's a picture of him right there. He's kind of new age or ambient, I would say, and he incorporates, you know, sometimes he'll put bird songs in his in his records and stuff like that. But it's on this excuse me, Cook label, which I've always liked. But yeah, sometimes he'll add acoustical elements into his electronics. I think they call that acoustic electric. But I've got several albums by Deuter, and This is another one of his that is really good, Nirvana Road by Deuter. Pre-band, someone that was, I'm dropping stuff. An album before artists became famous, and this is the only one I could think of. This is the Jimi Hendrix Experience at Monterey, along with Otis Redding. But yeah, I like Jimi Hendrix. And what does he do on here? I can't even remember. It's not one of his that I spin a lot. Well, he does like a Rolling Stone, Rock Me Baby, Can You See Me, and Wild Thing. And then Otis Redding does Shake, Respect, I've Been Loving You Too Long, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, and Try a Little Tenderness. So two good artists, pretty different, you know, but one psychedelic and the other a soul artist. But yeah, done live at Monterey. Let's see, so that's the pre-band. Like I said, that's where Hendrix became special. Show a movie or a book that you could recommend. I'd recommend this one. I don't know if you've ever seen this documentary on Daniel Johnston, but he died last year, and a really neat little artist out of Austin. Not that he grew up there, but that's where he more or less became famous. Sort of a, I believe they call that art brut or outsider artist, and he did the cartoons. He's a cartoonist as well, or he was a cartoonist, and he suffered from I don't know, a mental breakdown, or he had mental problems that plagued him for most of his life. But aside from that, he was a pretty prolific songwriter and was pretty gifted at composing lyrics. He one of the things I noticed about his lyrics is that he had a lot of internal rhyme with his lyrics, and by that I mean that like a lot of lyrics rhyme on the last sentence or the last part of the lyric, you know, where internal rhyme rhymes internally within the lyric. Like say, it was a cold day in June, noon rose anyway, or something like that, to where it kind of rhymes in the middle of it. But yeah, it's a really poignant CD and a real interesting documentary on Daniel Johnston. Okay, what else do we have? It's the musical album that is underrated. Now, a lot of people might, I don't know what people think about Kenny Loggins. I don't see anybody talk about Kenny Loggins in the community particularly, and this was his first, I believe his first solo album. It's called Welcome Me Home, or no, it's called Celebrate Me Home. And of course he started out in Loggins in Messina, and before that he was in a Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, I believe. And but this is a really good album. It's really beautifully arranged, written, and sung. And when I started out listening to music, I really dug, you know, vocals. I'm not so much of a vocalist now, and he really does sing well. And he's still going along today. There was a special that he had on Access TV that he played a concert on. Very good concert. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. And yeah, Kenny Loggins, Celebrate Me Home. Very warm album, kind of like Going Home for Christmas in a way. Very warm, engulfing album. Let's see here. Betting average artists that are consistently good albums. Well, I've mentioned John Abercrombie before. This is 5 years later, which is an album that he did with Ralph Towner. And as far as being a consistent artist, I would say Ralph Towner fits in that mold as well. They're both consistent artists. And here they are. This is Towner here and Abercrombie here. And they both play guitar. They're both guitarists. But yeah, I have many of their albums, and they're all worthwhile. Let's see here. Same cover, but different. Same album, but different artist. I would say this one here. This is David Bowie's Man Who Sold the World, and I picked up this particular copy because I like the cartooning on it, and it's colorful, and I like pop art as well, visually. And it had 3 different covers here in the States, and I don't know if I can show. This was one that was famous, and actually I don't collect double albums, but if I could find this album with Bowie in the dress, I think that's kind of cool, and I'd probably buy it if I could find it cheap enough. And then here's the other one that was more prominent, I think, here in the States, is this picture of Bowie on stage. But it's all the same album. It's The Man Who Sold the World. Let's see here. Albums I bought cheap, worth money. Well, I don't keep up with the price of albums or the music that I collect. I mean, like, it's more or less the music I collect. I either buy it and keep it, or I'll sell it back or trade it in or something like that. And some of them I wish that I hadn't traded in. The folly of youth, I guess you could say. But at any rate, I don't have much in that category except this one that I bought a couple of years ago, and it's not really an album. It's a 78, and this is Elvis Presley's Blue Moon of Kentucky on the Sun record label, and on the back of it is That's All Right. That's All Right, Mama. And I'm pretty sure this is the original 78, and it's actually in good shape for being as old as it is. I mean, it's worn, but I've seen worse on eBay, and they were selling for a couple of thousand. So I don't know. I haven't done much research on it, and I really don't plan on selling it. I mean, there's always that possibility if somebody wants to buy it for a couple of thousand. But anyway, there's that. Favorite drummer. I had a hard time with this one. There are a lot of good drummers. I usually don't listen to drums when I'm listening to music. I'm usually listening to the melody. Unless it's a particularly good drummer or percussionist. I do like a drummer that kind of flourishes things, more or less like Neil Peart of Rush, or say somebody like Stuart Copeland of The Police, how he kind of, he adds a lot to his drumming. But I thought of Bill Bruford from King Crimson, and Bruford has done his own solo albums as well, but always thought his drumming in King Crimson and early Yes was interesting. He added a lot to his drumming. Let's see here, what else? His favorite drummer, turning 20 in 2020. Albums that have been around for 20 years now. That's hard to believe. How time flies. But I came up with 2 albums. One is Porcupine Tree. This is Lightbulb Sam. And Porcupine Tree is a English progressive band, and they're not shown a lot on VC Community either. But they're in the mold. If you like things like middle era Pink Floyd, this kind of atmospheric, or and you like Beatles harmonies, then y'all like these guys pretty well. I mean, sometimes they can get a little heavy at times, and sometimes they can get a little abstract at times, with their ambience. But yeah, I mean, like they make good albums, and interesting progressive band. The other one I thought of that's kind of not quite in the same mold, but is Spock's Beard. This is Spock's Beard's V, or their 5th album. And Spock's Beard, if you like progressive music like Gentle Giant, then you ought to like these guys. Again, they kind of have Beatle harmonies, complex rhythms, and there's a complexity to their music, and you know, really interesting things that they do with their music. So, and particularly if you think you may want to try them, their earlier albums are a little bit better than their later albums. And this is like a later album. Like I said, this is their 5th one, I believe. Is where they get that V from. But you know, I like this one too, and they have several other ones that they've done later on that I enjoy. A trilogy of albums. You know, that one kind of stumped me too for a little bit. And I've only got 2 of this, well, I've got more than that, but they aren't in this particular series. But this is Anthony Phillips' Private Parts. He's done several of these Private Parts albums. This is Private Parts 2, Back to the Pavilion. And Anthony Phillips, as you may know, was a early member in Genesis. And he plays guitar and keyboards both, and sings. So he's a really multi-instrumentalist artist. This is Private Parts 4, A Catch at the Tables. And if I could find any more of these Private Parts, I'd prefer them on CD. But or if I could find, you know, either of these on CD, I'd probably buy them that way at, you know, fairly economical. But there's 2 of the Private Parts cassettes by Anthony Phillips, and they're really good albums, really interesting, sort of progressive. Here's some more. This is a WOMAD festival that was started by Peter Gabriel, and I've showed these before. This is the first one that he did, which is a 2-record set and is out of print now. I imagine the CD is out of print too. I don't know, but I really haven't looked on it or anything. This is the 2nd one in that series. And what these are is like modern artists and their influences. You got Peter Gabriel on this one that sings a song called Across the River. And I don't know if that's ever been published on anything else before, but it's an interesting album. But then you've got like John Hassell, Peter Hamill, Morris Peart, and then you got African artists like Mighty Sparrow, Prince Nico Barga, you've got Ecom, various, I'll just put it this way, various world acts. The drums of Burundi are on some of these. This one has Robert Wyatt on it. And then you've got a European addition to all that as well, WOMAD. And they all come with pretty neat write-ups, and they come with neat booklets and all that kind of good stuff. Bonus shout-outs. Well, I would say there's 2 guys in the LA area. One is Julius Jabbar, who has a lot of enthusiasm and shows a lot of interesting things. You've got Comic Rema, who's already done a contest, and his tastes are pretty varied. He's more laid back, but shows a lot of new stuff that I'm unfamiliar with. Then there's a guy down in Austin, so I got to pay respect to Texas VCers, who is Too Many 45s. He always shows like you know, like dub stuff, you know, like you know, reggae and, you know, jazz type things. Too Many 45s is his channel's name, I believe. So at any rate, it kind of looks like VC is doing well this year. And I hope everybody's healthy for next year and has an enjoyable 2020. So that's my VC for the beginning of the year, and hope everybody is doing well and has a good new year. So this is Dave. We'll talk to you later.